Hello, and thank you for watching this video here today at SCOMathon, where we're going to be talking about how we can help a Cookdown make your connectivity from SCOM to anywhere code-free, and how we can help with that. But before we do that, let's just quickly say hello and introduce ourselves. So I'm Bruce Cullen. I'm the Director of Products here at Cookdown, and with me I have Nathan Foreman, who is the Solutions Architect here at Cookdown as well.
Hello, thank you.
All right. I guess before we dig into all the cool new stuff that we're doing and sort of how that helps make code-free connectivity possible, a small piece of history. Since we as a company began, we've done bits and pieces for SCOM, but also for SCOM and Servicenow, connecting SCOM and Servicenow in lots of weird and wonderful ways. We had a product called Alert Sync that pushes SCOM alerts over to Servicenow as incidents or tasks to automate the process of creating those things from your SCOM alerts. Also, we have a product that helps populate the Servicenow CMDB with all of those cool objects are in SCOM. And this is what we've done since our existence. Now, from today, we're taking this approach and applying it to a bunch of other platforms as well, starting with messaging platforms such as Slack and Teams, but also bringing the same functionality that we have for Servicenow to Sharewell, and of course, looking at webhooks as well. And we're calling this new product Cookdown Connection Center. And we're really excited to be launching this today here at SCOMathon, and this will be the first time you get to see it live. So without further ado, we're going to dig into a demo, no more slides. So this is where I'll hand over to Nathan to take us through all the cool stuff we've been working on.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce. So we'll just jump straight into SCOM here, since that's really where all the activity is. And the first thing you'll see is there's a node up here for the new Connection Center product. And we've got inbound alert notifications, outbound alert notifications, and inbound maintenance. So in our latest release of Alert Sync for Servicenow, before we cut over to the Connection Center product, we introduced maintenance from Servicenow as well, which you'll see carried over here. And then the outbound and inbound updates are the same. You can see them here. And if I just pull up a quick view from Servicenow, it's the same view you're used to. So if you're familiar with that product, none of that has changed. It's just we've increased the breadth of what we can do. And
just to say, if you're not familiar with what we do for Servicenow, it's worth having a look at cookdown.com. Maintenance mode is a really cool new feature that we introduced in our latest Alert Sync release, and it lets you schedule maintenance mode from Servicenow. So you can tie in maintenance mode to your change request process. Really cool process and capability. But that's not new today.
Perfect. Thanks for the reminder, Bruce. So let's start off with something simple from the last slide that Bruce had showed. We'll create a new connection here, and you'll see that the first thing it does is it prompts you for where would you like to go. And let's just start with Slack. That's an easy one. So we get a new wizard and we'll send it to the Cookdown team. There's plenty of noise. You can never have too many alerts for SCOM. Part of the process involves getting a webhook set up for Slack. It's pretty straightforward. There's great online documentation, and we'll be glad to point you towards any additional documentation on that, if you have questions.
It's not much work at all. The other thing just to highlight here while Nathan's going through the wizard here is that what we're doing here is setting an outbound connection. So this will push SCOM alerts from SCOM to somewhere else. Inbound notifications, which we'll do separately in a minute, will pull updates from places like Sharewell. So just to make it clear what we're doing and why there's two separate wizards, this one will push SCOM alerts to Slack in this case.
Perfect. And then so we picked that we're going to send it to Slack. And after you say where you're going to send it, the first question it gives you here is, well, would you like a standard message, which is just a short alert name description, or a detailed message that has a little more information? And you're also given the opportunity to create a link for more information. So as we're close to squared up, we're going to generate a view on squared up link with all of our alerts that go out. And then the next page, after you configure this, is the subscription builder that you'll be familiar with from email subscriptions. So we've tried to keep as much consistency as possible in your SCOM usage and brought that through. So you can use all of the items you would have used in the past to create notifications and go through and build those.
That's one of those bits of SCOM that actually is pretty nice. It's pretty granular what you can do with the subscription criteria builder. It's really quite cool.
It's a nice UI. And then the next step, just pick where you want to store this configuration. It's stored in a management pack, which makes it easy to transition between your development and production environments as well as backup. We're going to use the default option of a Cookdown connection center configuration pack, but you could also export it to XML if you had a change process, or use an existing management pack if you had a way to group those. And then the final screen here, it gives you a summary of what you're going to do before you click save. It goes through and it says, well, we're going to put it to the Cookdown Slack connection. Here's the URL. It's fairly long, caused it to wrap there. We'll use the detailed format, and it even gives you a breakdown of what I had selected in that previous screen. And then the next steps, so the wizard's going to create a monitor, and it'll perform a connection test. And this summary will actually be attached to the monitor, so in future, there'll be less questions on like what's this monitor do or what's it configured for. It's all easily available.
Which is always good. Nothing worse than coming back to something you created, however many months, weeks ago, and forgetting what it is. Another point that will become sort of clearer as you go through this demo is the whole, we create a monitor. We use, the monitoring capabilities of SCOM to monitor our inbound and outbound connections. So if they go down, you know about it.
Yeah. So as you see while we were talking there, it's performing the testing, and if I hit refresh, it knows that the connection is valid. I'll pick an alert here just to trigger. I had picked a broad criteria just for simplicity so that I can pick any of these, and let's say we'll go to awaiting evidence. And if we pull up Slack here, should take maybe a minute or two, depending on your patience with SCOM. We did just create that monitor and stuff, but we should see that alert shortly pop over here. I guess even less than a minute. It works quick with the new subscription format. And there's that view on squared up link that I had created. And if we click that, you'll see it's actually built it out with the correct alert ID as part of the process.
Right, which is really quite useful because then you go beyond just simply consuming the alerts to be able to see more information for sort of troubleshooting a diagnosis and be able to take action too.
Yeah. So I'll quick throw in a Teams one here, which we'll circle back to later. And then we'll take a deeper look at Sharewell, since that's a more robust integration. The Teams UI you'll see is very similar to.
It is. It's a very similar process, essentially all based around webhooks. So again, in Teams, you go and create a webhook. There's, again, lots of online documentation on how to do this, which will be sort of linked to on our own support site as well. Yeah.
And one item I forgot to mention before, but does carry through with all of these connections. You'll see here, there's now an option to use a proxy. So we support through the UI proxy connections as well as proxy authentication. There is a run as profile for proxy credentials so that you can connect if your environment is behind a secure setup. Paste that link in again here. just put your message in there. It is flexible, which is nice. This criteria will leave on notify on all alerts. Stick with the same, and you'll see the same wizard flow there. So I'll save that. Let this go through, and then let's take a look while the engine generates that at connecting to Sharewell. So we'll go into Sharewell here. We're going to do our development Sharewell instance. And you just paste in your UI or your URL to the Sharewell API. And then it'll need a client ID, as they use client IDs for the authentication, as well as a run as profile. You have an option to check here. We have created a default, and it ships with a Sharewell account run as profile. However, you can choose others if for some reason you have multiple Sharewell instances that require different configuration or for whatever need you might have.
Right. I can imagine that being a common use case if you've got multiple Sharewells, if you've got a dev and a test, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I could see that being important. So then we'll just go next here. And the next one, you'll see it's going to ask a couple questions on, well, if we're going to create an incident, who should we create it to? And so I'll put in a couple items here. Call source event service.
So these options that you're filling in here are all essentially going to be things from your Sharewell instance. So whatever you want to set is what you would put in here.
Correct. And for the Sharewell example, let's pick a specific one. We've got a test monitor that we're going to send to me for, let's see, raised by specific rules. And I've got one. We've got there's more than I thought on there. A simple rule for a store transaction failing. It's a simulated one for our case, but it's something that a person definitely needs to look into. So it's just, a customer had a transaction in the web store, but it failed, and we just need to figure out why. So we've created a simple outbound alert destination for that here to Sharewell. And the next two questions will be the same as what you had seen before.
Is it sort of as much reuse in the wizard sort of as possible? So it's more sort of familiar once you've learned the process once. There aren't sort of things to learn a second time around where not possible, where not required.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep that as consistent as possible, and it helps with reliability. Just nice solid code. We just reuse it. So we'll wait for that to go green here as it connects out to Sharewell and does the authentication. And for our Sharewell demo, we also support pulling back the Sharewell status. So let's go over and set up an inbound notification from Sharewell. In the inbound notifications, you'll see I had created one ahead of time. As with all the items in Connection Center, you can double click them as well to go in and review and modify the wizard. You'll see that the connection setup is the same, and there's just a couple questions here on when it brings back incidents, what would you like to do? These questions will be familiar to those that have used the Servicenow product, but we support bring back and update the custom fields, but do nothing, only close alerts and reset unit monitors. And we can go all the way up to close alerts and then also reset unit and dependency monitors. And then the final option here is just depending on your company's process, indicate what incident state in Sharewell you would like us to consider closed to close that incident. I've gone with resolved as that fits our flow better.
Ultimately, there's no kind of right or wrong sort of approach to this. It usually comes down to kind of company process and preference.
Yeah. So let's pull up. Here's our Sharewell incident here. You can see some of our test ones. I will go over and let's synthetically have a user have a potential issue on the website. So you should see a new alert come here and momentarily. And it looks like, oh, there it is. So an online store transaction failed, potentially missed sale. An existing customer, John at Squared Up, was unable to purchase a specific product.
Mm-hmm.
So within a minute or so, that should actually move over to Sharewell. So I'll refresh this here and we should see it come in with the items that we had configured just moments ago.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly the sort of thing we do want to, as an incident, it's quite an important one for us.
Yes, yeah. That's why it seemed like a good one for most companies these days, with online being so critical with the pandemic type stuff. You just have to stay on top of that.
Indeed.
So here's that new incident from John at Squared Up, assigned to me. And you can see it's web services, internet submit incident, and first level support.
Cool.
Guess I get to be solutions architecture and first level support for this call, but that's all right.
Many hats to wear. That's all good.
Indeed. So I'll go take a look over here. Cool, it looks good. Maybe there's an issue. I'll shoot an email off to him. So I just go through the process in Sharewell, following the business process, and we'll go in and I'll resolve this and say, oh, contacted John. Depends on your process here.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cause, regular website outage, they happen even to the best of us.
They do.
Okay, and so then that'll be updated here. If we refresh, we should see it. It's in a resolved state. I don't want to reopen it. But if I go back now to SCOM, the first thing you'll see is it actually had pulled through the ticket ID when it created it.
So one thing to say on that is you can see in the ticket ID list here, we have ticket IDs from both Sharewell and from Servicenow. So, in the case we've got multiple Servicenow instances or Sharewell instances, you can have those ticket IDs and bits of information like it coming through from multiple systems.
Exactly, yeah, for whatever works with your process best. And we had set up teams earlier, so we should now be able to pull that up in a.
So I guess presumably what we're expecting to see in Teams is the alert is closed off, basically.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So there's the new one.
Just need to give it a little bit of time to sync then.
A little bit of time.
And there again, you have your more details on Squared Up button. So you've in the setup there, put in that link to the dashboard.
Yep, and that link works the same as it did before, just with the new text.
Cool.
Oh, you can see it's closed. I guess we were just quick enough. If we minimize that back down, we should see momentarily. It should come through as closed here and notify us via Teams as well as Slack. And with the criteria, you noticed in the criteria builder, you get that granularity. So if one team prefers a tool over another team, that's something, there's that closed notice. That's something that Connection Center can handle, that if your database team uses Teams and your web team uses Slack, you can easily filter it so each team gets the alerts and the tool they prefer.
Sounds good. And we've seen examples of, multiple cases of that. Usually if you're in a more sort of DevOpsy environment, Slack is what's currently in vogue. Whereas, Teams, because it's included in quite a lot of Office license additions, is very prevalent as well. But ultimately, ITSM platforms are ultimately where things like SCOM alerts are best sort of positioned, which is why the likes of Sharewell and Servicenow are important as well.
And I think that covers the core of the functionality.
What I'll do quickly is just take back the screen, and I have a few final slides just to talk about what we've covered essentially, and then just to talk about the future direction. So if I just quickly take back screen.
Perfect.
So essentially, we have in SCOM a bunch of things that can be pushed or pulled. And to date, obviously, historically, we've had Servicenow as our sort of main focus, but now we have Sharewell, Slack, and Teams. And with Servicenow, we have the ability to push and pull alerts, to handle maintenance requests, and also to populate the CMDB. Today with Sharewell, we're just working with alerts. The same is true of Slack and also of Teams. So that's today. But as you can see, there are quite a lot of areas in this graph without ticks. So if you want an idea of where we're going in the future with this, one thing we could do would be to build, to fill in all of these all of the rows of this table effectively with ticks. But what we plan to do is wait for you guys to tell us what you would like to see, because there isn't much point in us building, something that pushes events to Sharewell, for example, if there's no need for it. And for that one, I can imagine there probably won't be a need for it. So just to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing as to what the future does look like for us, there are a few things that we can say for certain. So no code integrations for SCOM are top of our list. They're very important to us because, we believe that this stuff should be really, really simple, and we want to make our products capable of doing this for you. So in terms of what's next, we want you to tell us what you would like us to connect to. So that looks like additional systems, but also if there are specific features, like I've just alluded to with the previous slide, that you'd like to see. So for example, CMDB population in Sharewell, then, we now have the capabilities to do all of these things, and we're looking to build out our feature roadmap in these areas too. Just to give you a flavor of what we've talked about, so sort of in terms of other platforms we could connect to and sort of looking at working on, here is a few examples. So we've got other monitoring tools that we can look at pulling alerts from into SCOM. So we're not just looking at pushing SCOM alerts, we're looking at pulling as well. But really, it will all be driven by your feedback, which is really, really exciting. So Nathan, we've got a little bit of time left. So what I'd really like to just talk about and touch on a bit more is some of the things that are in the pipeline. So we've mentioned webhooks, essentially. What I'd really like to understand in more detail is how you see those kind of being used, the practical applications of webhooks.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're trying to follow some of the behavior of the common webhooks you see from other platforms. Keep that streamlined, easy to set up workflows. So we'll keep the UI you saw there before. You'll put in your webhook address, and then we're just currently working now on the stage on building that payload. So we'll give you a list of options, all those properties you're used to in SCOM, and you can kind of shape that up and send it off to whatever destination you'd like, whether that's Everbridge or Twilio, or even your own homegrown internal application.
So there's a few things that I think are really key about that. So we're keeping with the sort of no code theme, a bit of payload shaping is all essentially that will be required. And you mentioned there custom homegrown applications. So as long as essentially your internal business application accepts webhooks, we can push SCOM alerts to that destination essentially.
Exactly, yeah. So if you've got whatever system you've used internally to track work or just to track items inside your business and you'd like to get SCOM data into there, that's what we're hoping to integrate with.
Very cool, very cool. The other thing that I think it's worth talking about a little bit more is on that last slide I showed, we mentioned things like SolarWinds and Nagios. So pulling things into SCOM rather than pushing things out of SCOM, where it's not actually adding additional monitoring. Can you think of why people might want to do that?
It's a great place to provide some of the roll-up to centralize your data and to use an industry common term, a single source of truth. I'm sure you've come across that in your days as well.
Oh yes, there's always the search for a single source of truth. I mean, the thing with SCOM is ultimately, you are an attendee at SCOMathon. It's likely you have SCOM in in your company, and you're very familiar with it. You're familiar with the fact it has a very good alerting capabilities and a health model, which not all platforms have. So if you can pull in all of those alerts from other alerting type monitoring type systems, your single source of truth can be SCOM. All of your
Exactly.
alerts are
That's
in one place. Yeah.
kind of what we were thinking. And then if it was as easy to configure as what you saw in some of the other items where you pick Nagios or whatever from that wizard and you just enter a couple quick steps, you could then get your roll-ups with your distributed applications or enterprise applications to also include that data and alert
That's
on those.
really cool, because then you go beyond just simply infrastructure monitoring and ingesting data from one system. You can then mix together that data from multiple sources, multiple systems, to truly create the single source of truth, rather than having everything spread across multiple systems. SCOM could be that. Yeah, really cool.
Yep. And as it builds out, you can start to leverage recoveries and some of those other items you're used to in SCOM and
Mm.
take action with the agents you already have everywhere and remediate items you get from other sources.
Really, really powerful. The other thing I wanted to touch on, if we've got time, I think we've got a minute or two, is other ITSM tools. So we're obviously very familiar with ServiceNow. We're starting down the journey with Sharewell as well. What do you foresee in the future as far as other ITSM tools are concerned?
We've done a little looking at the BMC side with Remedy and their Helix offering. So it'd be great if anyone today is familiar with those two, that they've got a SCOM need there. I think that's probably the biggest one on my radar
Yeah.
as a key player out there.
I would agree. I'm also interested in hearing feedback from anyone that's using Jira Service Desk
Sure.
in production for something where SCOM would make sense. What we're really looking for is, if you are someone out there who has another ITSM tool and you think, you know what, I really want to get my SCOM alerts up into it, or it's CMDB populated, we really like to hear from you, so that we can work on sort of developing products together rather than in sort of isolation, so that we prioritize the right ITSM tools first and make sure that we're building integrations, code-free integrations that are valuable to the community, to the SCOM community, essentially. Perfect. More information is at cookdown.com/connection-center, where you can take a trial, you can book a demo, and of course, ask us anything you like. But given that this is a conference, we're taking live Q&A in the Meet the Speaker session, which will start after this session right now. We also are going to be around at the expo the entire event, and this is our team. So one of us four will be there in this booth in the Hopin platform during the event, during SCOMathon. So feel free to drop in and ask us anything at any old point. The final thing to say is we are on all the usual kind of social media places. We are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, good old-fashioned email. So feel free to reach out via any of those means to contact us. So that's everything we had to show. Thank you very much for watching. And we will see you hopefully in the Meet the Speaker session, which starts immediately now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to talking to all of you.
Indeed. Thank you.